It sits in a circle and everybody wants to sit in the background. Oh my God, it's so chilling. Yes, 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 okay. We live?
Yes, we are.
Right. We're on the internet right now, folks. Just live. Just kidding. We're live stream these events, and we actually sometimes get engagement from people watching online because they're able to pose questions. So we'll introduce those as we go. Um, I did want to introduce the concept here, but we have poetry. What do you want to do? Do you want to do that now? Or do you want it to like push us into conversation? We'll do whatever you want to do. Yeah, Mama. Introducing Mama. Okay, so Mama is a poet, an educator too. He is the poet laureate emeritus of the city of Cincinnati. Yeah, exactly. And his poetry often deals with themes of life, mortality, immortality, love, migration. Yes. Yeah. So all themes that I think really feel relevant to tonight. And he was in the last one, right? Uh, Around somatic sensing and healing and how we feel our bodies, etc. He said you can so what's your voice? It's been months of vocal for us to start us off tonight, but maybe I'll just go around and introduce folks. So to your right. We've already met you, Oscar Salamanca, an instrumentalist, ethnomusicologist. We saw all of that on display here. Um, and let's see what else. I did take notes. You're so accomplished that like it's hard to keep it all in my head all at once. So, okay, where are you? You're in this long list of accomplishments here. Oh yeah, dancer. Not the only dancer in the circle tonight. And you're also the CEO of La Formula Music Productions, which is a collaborative series of events to showcase Latin American music and culture. Yeah, correct. Yeah, cool. Maybe we'll hear a little bit more about that tonight. So fantastic. And from Colombia. From Bogota. Yeah, yeah, wonderful. And Manuel from Mexico. Yes, from the Yucatan. Yeah, really great. Okay. Olga. Olga. I haven't met Olga yet. We haven't met Olga. Some of you know Olga already. Gabriel also from Colombia. And women's gender and sexuality studies as a professor at UC, but with law degrees, both from your home country of Colombia and also Canada,
Yes.
right? Focused on international human rights law, fascinating stuff. Topics of family work conflict under globalization, relationships among military aid, trade, and human rights in Colombia, feminist motherhood, etc. The list goes on. So, yeah, I'm so excited to meet you and hear what you have to say. You too. Yeah, yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Is that okay? Yeah. But Mexico as well. Excellent dancer, choreographer. I had the privilege of seeing Pato y Muerte at the Freedom Center. Just really stunning piece. This romance between duck and death. So moving, and so I'm so excited to hear about Dos Corazones Productions, which creates connections amongst arts and the Hispanic communities in town, right, and Greater Cincinnati. And you work a lot with the immigrant community as well, yeah? Yeah, I've been can I most of the immigration topic. Three is one. Of course, it's arts, it's performing arts. I cannot do it just like everywhere. Actually, we performed twice upstairs in this building, and the other times at the Freedom Center and in the Memorial Hall.
All of these events to I've been so lucky to work with Arms with some grants that they give it to me. The first work that I did was called Nosotros Us, about being a Latino immigrant in Cincinnati. I made a short film that was presented in the Film Center and the performance dance. I normally work with more like um, mixed different arts. Yeah. So that one was medium and dance together. That were presented in at the Memorial Hall and speak about this being immigrant, especially in Cincinnati, being Latino and showing the diversity that we have in our own culture. Yes, the short film talk about the different people, different reasons that they immigrate here, here in Cincinnati with all their stories. Yeah.
Beautiful.
So I was kind of like just dancing stories.
Yeah. We'll have to follow up about how people can really see the film and so on. So yeah, fantastic. Okay, last but not least, Drielly Queiroga is a scientist from Brazil. She studies visual ecology, how animals see the world and how that's shaped by where they live, focused on neotropical insects and spiders, particularly in her native country of Brazil, but also learning some things about animals that live in Brazil. Yeah, absolutely. Gianna is also the Iris postdoc fellow, so she engages in this research in the context of the Institute for Research in Sensing. So, and also brought the topic to us. Yeah. So this was her idea, which is fantastic. Um, and you met me. So I'm the director for the Institute for Research and Science. This is the moderator. So I'm just going to help things move with any purpose needed. I don't feel like we're going to have a topic of this. So, for those who have not been to an online before, these are not panel discussions. We've invited these voices into the center to help us move in conversation. But when these work well, the audience is speaking as much of the time as the people that we've invited. So the idea is we'll begin our conversation. I've already prompted them with what I'm going to ask for them. And there might be like a one quick around the center, and then it's meant to go. If you have things, ideas, stories, questions, etc., please just raise your hand. I'll do my best to bring your voices into the conversation. These are hard conversations to stop, and then thinking where they end up producing more questions, ideas, curiosities than they solve, and that's the point. So at some point in time, I'm going to have to stop us, and that might feel disappointing. But the point is, bring these questions, conversations, stories out into your life. We are allowed to be here until 9:30, so you can linger after the conversation, but too long. Okay. Quickly, before we move to Manuel, I just have a few thanks, which is that these events are supported by the University of Cincinnati through their Research 2030 initiative, also supported by our external partnerships that help to fund our graduate program, but also some of our events here. These include the Environmental Protection Agency, the National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health, Kroger, and Procter and Gamble. And it's a different set of external partners every year that work with our graduate students in our graduate program. I'd also like to thank ARCO and Price Hill Will, who have been gracious enough to host us here. Thanks, Jim, who helps to manage this facility and works at Price Hill Will. And I also just want to give a quick shout out to my beautiful partner, Amy Tuttle, who helps to form a number of the connections between Iris and the conversationalist tonight. So she's actually almost landed in Colombia right now. So unfortunately, you cannot be with us, but thanks, Amy, for helping us to pull this together. So, I'm gonna read you can wait. Because every time we was again twice, more than every I will be reading first in English and then in Spanish. And I do it in this order, um, even though the original is in Spanish, because that way, when you hear the original, you already know what I'm talking about. And instead of placing some words, you can focus on the music of the book. And I'm going to read two poems that have to do in different ways. One of them is a result of the time that I am poet in the translate. And if you are poet in the translate, you have to read, and I am focusing on some point. So I was asking my students to write handful of poems, and then one of them told me my name, and um, but that was difficult because I am an immigrant who has been lucky enough to find a place here. Uh, Now when I go back to Mexico, because of the privilege of being able to, which I know is not really nice. When I go back, we don't miss friends, places, places from. When I'm here, I miss I miss not being different. That's what I miss most when I'm here. I miss speaking when I'm relaxing. I miss not being introduced with what Mexican everything that I do. You know, there I'm just here in Mexican word, Mexican phone. People ask me, like, so many people, you're thinking about doing soon. I miss I miss not being different. I miss uh, listening to my language in the streets. You know, I miss. So I wrote this poem called "I Am From Here," which I think in the end I revealed in this journal. I am from here. One is from the places that he has survived, from the language in which he cannot dream. One day it happens, and he wakes up wondering which one is in his house. There is always a world. When it comes from the streets that never be the same, here it comes. When it comes from the movement that when he decided to leave from that other one which realizes that everything that moves, that is impossible to stay, even if you stay. That is impossible, even if you go to be back. I write on those things like to point at it. And from here, soy de aquí. Uno es de los sitios a los que ha llegado, del idioma en el que no puede soñar, y un día sucede y se despierta preguntándose cuál es su tasa ahora, cuando sienta el corazón tentado. No proviene de las calles que ya no son las mismas. Viene del momento en el que decidió partir y de ese otro, en el que entiende que todo se aleja, que es imposible quedarse aunque te quedes, que es imposible aunque regreses. Dice, escribo un verso que es como una despedida y lo señalo, soy de aquí. Then the second poem has to do with a different type of religion. I wrote this second poem after one of the most important events in my life, which is the birth of my daughter. If you have been in an immigrant household, you know that two languages are spoken. One from the northern, and one from the south, which includes famous targets of small industry. So he opens a window and we have another language coming. Um, so when my daughter was really little, when she still didn't talk, I really being really that my language, which is the language in which I learn, was going to be a foreign language. And is she going to be able to communicate with her grandparents? Is she going to be able to make these connections? we're going to be able to have this secret language that everybody in the language will learn. And thinking of those things, I mean, this and I think that this is one of the values that I think that this will has. I have found over time is that usually we hear the story of the kids of the migrants. You know, a lot of Hispanic immigrants in the U.S. and a lot of migrant babies in the U.S. who see immigration. When they tell you about growing up in that family, they tell you about those struggles as the kids of immigrants. Uh, But this is the voice of this is the voice of the family. It's free, and the kid is not honest. Um, and one day, I hope my daughter is 6 years old right now, and she doesn't care about you know she one day we will talk about this moment, the language of books. Sometimes I am afraid that you will talk in the language in which I cannot dream. I almost always wish that you live first the language of the house, the one in which I lull you to sleep, in which I imagine you telling me your things. You still don't know that there is a different music inside. Lately, I have been afraid of the moments because you are not here in this place, in this language in which I am a foreigner, and I want to live in your world, the language that you will have within your words. I am afraid that you will also know the impossibility of belonging, but you will build your own home and like anyone else. If someone asks you where you're from, tell them that you came from your father's life. Not will learn any language to do with you. El idioma de Dios. A veces tengo miedo de que hables el idioma en el que no puedo soñar. Así siempre deseo que primero vivas el idioma de la clase, el mismo en que te rubio, en el que te imagino platicándome tus cosas. Todavía no distingues que afuera hay otra música. Últimamente tengo miedo de los meses porque tú has nacido aquí, en este sitio, en este idioma en el que soy un extranjero y yo quiero vivir dentro de tu mundo, del idioma que tendrás, de tus palabras. Me da miedo que conozcas la imposibilidad de pertenecer, pero que no es tu patria, como cualquiera. Si te preguntan de dónde eres, diles que has venido del corazón de tu madre, de un corazón que aprendería cualquier idioma para hablar contigo. Well, we're going to start in a sentimental space because I communicated to all of you that the opening question or prompt was to share a memory where you felt a deep sense of belonging, wherever that was, and to describe it with the senses. What were the smell, the taste, the sound, the sight experiences that are part of this memory of belonging? And so we don't need to start with anybody in particular. But if you have one of these memories to share,
Well, I can share one that to me is really important because along life we had a lot of moments that we feel displaced or out of our place, and not only about moving to another country, but even within your own country when you get out of your parents' house and you go live alone and you go to university, and then sometimes you move to another state, you're always distancing yourself a bit more and more from that heart where you were from. Um, I believe that like people from Latin America understand a bit of this mindset that our households they are really centered in the figure of the mother, the grandma, like the mother, the women, they are really important to us. And I was raised by my grandma, and the place, whatever, any place that I've been in my memory, being in her living room, sitting by the couch, putting my head there, looking at my grandma, talking, telling some stories about her childhood. So, I'm sorry, that's my, it's because my story, but I still like kind of smell them. And whenever I feel sad or feel like I'm not doing well, I try my best always me. And that is my place of belonging, gives me heart, place to be. Sorry.
So I can continue. Um, my home, where I grew up, is the place that I also feel that I belong the most. After I moved out, it was a group of friends in Bogota, eh, at one university. We had this club of hiking in the mountains, and in those camping trips, I also felt that I belonged to those mountains. The smell, the fresh air. In Colombia, you could walk and then you find the trees of mangoes, arándanos, blueberries, and a bunch of fruits, and you're so tired after walking 6 8 hours, and then you arrive, and then you find this amazing tree of mangoes that smell and refresh you, and it's those are the moments in which I felt that I have belonged the most. I have been an immigrant for more than 30 years, and I have never felt so. But I also cannot go back, as your point, right? And it's like those streets that I walk, or those people that I met, or even my own family. I am not part of that. So we live in like in two places, in the past and the present, and with a lot of contradictions. And but yeah, those were the kind of the best moments. So, and I wish I could recreate those moments in the mountains. You know, my mom eating her delicious food. Yeah.
There's so you're being so I'm not from here, I'm from there. And being a musician, we always listen things a lot, all the time. Um, Having a lot of information through song. And the first time that I felt that I belonged to somewhere was within the Quechua community, as I was mentioning before. Maybe I'm from Bogota, it's a huge city full of everything. And when you spend like almost 11 years without feeling that your home situation, I really enjoy being with my family. I have beautiful family, everything. But it was like you belong here. For the first time that I had, this is when I started listening to the Quechua community in Colombia. In Bogota, there's a huge community of the Quechua speakers. And then after almost 25 years, I started learning how to speak it, to understand it. And every time that it passes through me, I feel like a kid again, you know? But they start saying, now I understand why I feel that way when I was a kid. Now I understand how subtle words or subtle phrases are never possible to be translated. You know, whoever speaks more than one language knows their meaning and in there are things that you can't say in English or in Spanish or Quechua, you know, and that sensation of finally get definite words of things. That's the one of the biggest impact for me through the senses. Like one word can mean this. And I think everyone is relating with that love. You can hear it. It doesn't sound the same for everyone.
Mhm. 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 I I believe in one moment and yeah. I like to think I know everything I know. Yeah. I remember last summer, um, speaking of grandmothers, my grandmother's birthday is May 15th. I went to Mexico in August. I was celebrating her birthday. We went to the house. Well, she loves dancing salsa. So and she says, and it was her birthday. And this is a numerous thing. So people were saying that it's and when they asked me what was the party, we said it's the name is Candelaria, we call it Tandita. And we call this party the Tali Feast. And the Tali Fest was a beautiful celebration. And there was my grandma, and there was my and there was my parent, and there was my sister, and there was my daughter. And they were all in the same place. And we were dancing. And there was and I remember going to bed that night thinking that I found a house. Like they're the places that they can live. They're not fishing places that are cheap. When I go to Mexico, I go to these people. And usually when I travel more than places. You know. I've been in famous countries and not in the famous city because my friends live somewhere else.
Mhm.
I travel to when I am in places, when I'm sharing with people that I feel like mm, uh, friends, family, etc. That's when I'm wrestling with my daughter. Joy, sparkle.
And in 2019, I was working with a dance company here. So in 2019, I decided not to work with that company anymore. I started doing my own projects. So I decided to create this sort of organization called Los Corazones, which that means two hearts. But it was very important for me because the only thing that became to my mind when I create that name, it was okay, I'm here. Sometimes I have used two hearts, one with my people in Mexico. I have no family here. It's my partner, it's family. And my other heart is in right. So that's why I create this uh Don Sones with the aim to be part of the Hispanic community and bring art for them. So I've been moving all the time in my life. I grew up in a small town in the mountains in Querétaro. And then I moved to the city, and then I feel like I didn't belong at some point up there. So I started constructing being part of the community, right? And then I moved to some places, some countries, and then I moved here, first in North Carolina and then in Cincinnati. And for me, it's my home is kind of myself because when you are in on the dance field profession, you start very young. So it's something that you have all your life and it's been with you for all so many years. So just broke that kind of bubble in my mind. It's very difficult because you are in a different world out of the bubble. Just I move here, how can I continue with this art? I need like a specific space and a specific floor to dance. Like you know, dancing just like everywhere. And when I started doing my own projects and I started receiving support, not just like financial, but uh, emotional support from the people, and find out that other people wants to work with me in my projects, I start feeling that I belong to a community. And for me, it was very important because it was in the moment after some years living here, and I started feeling this place like home. Not before, even doing movements, dancing, doing stuff. And then we started meeting my neighbors. What happened with the pandemic because everybody was on the streets, on the houses, is when we start building that community in my neighborhood. The people live just beside my footsteps. And then we decided to share food with the people who we know. So we have like dinners in every houses different days. And for the first thing that I cooked was like Mexican food. It's something that I feel home just cooking in my house. Uh, when I feel kind of sad, I always make like a hot chocolate because it's something that reminds me my childhood. And I was really excited to make hot chocolate with my grandpa, my grandma. And it's something that I really, really need, that I feel that I need, that I need to have my people, right? And I'm lucky that I can find out the Mexican chocolate in Colombia. I'm gonna be happy to do this. And yeah, this when I start feeling that I belong to this place somehow, but my other heart belong with my family, which is in Mexico. So I will huge lucky to travel some like a privilege that I have, some people cannot have. Um, and it's kind of the link that keep me all the time with this spirit to continue growing and creating things, even though there cannot come from some business.
Mhm. Mm, mm. I want to make a little, maybe a strange observation about how much of belonging passes through the mouth. Every single one of you spoke in some way about food, about language, right? About chocolate, mango, the words of Quechua, right? Um, yeah. We relate to community. We build a community through our ability to communicate, right? It's really striking to me how many of your senses of belonging came through smell, right? Sound.
Yeah. And I think like for the map, for the language, it's a big part, just like Oscar mentioned before. Even when we learn a second language, I don't know you, but I don't feel myself speaking in English. That's the Drielly that speaks English is not the same Drielly that speaks Portuguese. So the way that I use the words, the way that I like make jokes is different. And to think about finding a word. So sometimes you like, oh, I want to say something, but I don't know the word. You go to Google Translator and give you a word. Oh, what's that slang? You go to Google Dictionary and give us one. Okay, what's translation? But this is translation of the word, not my feeling. And when and the word they say like, oh, this is the equivalent in English because you haven't grew up with that word and with the feeling that doesn't sound the same to you. So you use, but you're not feeling that you're expressing the way that you would like to. And that to me is the hardest part of feeling that I am home. That like I can just speak whatever I have in my mind and people are going to understand not just by the words that I'm using, but the way that I'm speaking. And whenever you go to their place, you have to adapt to that, to try to communicate to people using more than just words, but the meanings and the way that you talk to express yourself in some way.
And I have found out that it's very difficult to relate in the foreign language with other people. Like for instance, you go to a dinner, big dinner, and people start to say jokes and refer to this and from the history of the place. Things that you have no idea what they're talking about. No. Do you relate if you cannot understand that common language? So, I am an academic, I'm able to talk about these extravagant weird words in theory. It's very different the relationship. Like I met a Colombian and I am able and so it's really, really difficult. I think that that's a big, big barrier for feeling that you belong
Mhm.
because there's always that separation, that degree of separation with other people. And I wanted to touch on something that you referred to in your second point, which is our kids, right? And the feeling that they belong now to this country and to this culture. And mine is a teenager, right? So you haven't gotten there yet. And that they become really, really their own personas, and there's also a degree of separation from who they become. And for me, then that's a reality that you have to accept that you came to this country to have your children, and they are gonna be very different than what you were in your space. So it's difficult. The identities, uh, the values, even past values, that they absorb a lot of values from the space that they have to interact and now social media, TikTok.
Yeah.
So,
What's the need for other ways of doing it? Because of course, yeah, when there is communality and I feel, for example, here in the United States, yes, when I meet someone from Mexico, um, uh, or somebody from Latin America in general, I do feel that there is some background. At the same time, I've been for example, was once in Poland. I was invited to read Poland. I had no idea it was anything in Polish. And it was translated. I read my poems and then the translator read the translation to English weapons. And there was this one poet in Poland. And he read his poems. He really liked the translation of his poems. He really liked the translation of my poems. And we ended up getting tipsy together. With the help of the translator. Social. In this sense, I live alone first. Yeah. And I have a degree of connection with this man that I do not necessarily have with everybody that I meet from my country.
oh yeah,
Because we have something that is deeper than the nationality, something that is deeper, sometimes even than the, I would say than the language, because to me, poetry is the ability to use words to go beyond words. You know? And when you're interested in poetry, you have to translate out from the silence and you're trying to see everything that was there. And I like his I like this thing. He was my professor. He's been classical that for 4 years. And I cannot take anything like I can have little doesn't glance. And the guy who was teaching me guitar, he played with the Philharmonic Orchestra of the Yucatan. And he knew that he was not going to be an instrumentalist. He knew that he was going to be an artist. So it became for me to be around other artists over the things. And one time I remember that we went to a party. I suppose we went out for the party of poet. Not at least. The kinds of musicians are amazing. We have artists, friends, companies, and musicians. Don't go find names. They just now these were because they were part of the Philharmonic Orchestra of the Yucatan. They were people from many places, but they hired musicians from many places. In Yucatan, they didn't speak the same language. These were amazing. But they didn't understand each other talking, but they could also to play. And so that was essentially they belong to the art. So when I have gone here in Cincinnati, in find schools that made me feel like I do. You know, I have friends that not just play, but they are souls that I can connect with. And much of a belonging or lack of belonging has to do with the resistance that we put to find that community behind the demons. If we are willing to see that, we will find it. In the same way that if we are willing to see the difference, we'll find it. Right? So it also has to do with how porous is your filter. How, how willing you are to let someone in, how willing you are to find them. I have I have friends who legend poets, and I am not a legend person. Maybe maybe there is something that we have in common, you know. And we if you like this.
Great, thank you, everyone. Manuel, I respond to something that you said about there's a sense of belonging that's deeper than nationality. I wanted to ask and maybe suggest that what people were remembering oddly was not necessarily nationality, but a geographical region and experience, sensory experience, eating mangoes on these mountains. So I think nationality is such an abstraction, but to have a sense of belonging that's created through nationality might be a, let's say, a micro region or a shared experience. For instance, I'm from the East Coast, and when I meet people who's grew up smelling the New York subways, you know, I maybe, you know, around in California is too pristine, you know, so it's not being American there, it's that experience of, you know, the streets in the summer that are hot and the pizza, you know.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Uncultured. Yeah, but I'm sure it's also specific to these regions.
The music that Oscar played today, you, you know, we have 30 years. my life, when I used to listen to that music. And of course brought all these memories back of when I was local, listening to this music or dancing. That was amazing. Like the sense of it.
Connection.
Yeah.
Um, well, part of me to identify those things that I belong to or who I belong with. It's understanding or in sense to it, understanding from fragmentation and displacement.
Mm.
I can understand where I'm lacking, how I need to feel those words if I don't know I am fragmented. What you were mentioning about your filtering, how do I let those things in? I let those things in because I'm fragmented. Parts that I am here, parts that I'm in Spanish, you know.
Mm.
So when you're two different personalities in the two meanings, I'm funny in Spanish.
Mm.
And when I'm speaking, when I tell a lot of folks, when you tell me like, I'm familiar in Spanish, so but nowadays, every time that we do meetings here, we feel those empty spaces we made first, you know. And it's beautiful to like when we are having our meetings, there's always like a little United Nations meeting now. It's always like a bunch of people just putting that little way to fill those empty spaces. You know? So for me to be able then that's it. Man, I belong to this spot. I belong to this food, this music, this culture, these people. It's first noticing how fragmented I am,
Mhm.
you know. What brought me to that spot, feeling that loophole or perceiving that void, you know, everyone has a void. The second thing that I wanted to go to was the from the mouth out
Mhm.
and trying to come back to that origin. Can we go to the first person? Who was it? My first ancestor. Who was it? The first liar. Who was it? But we're always like, I want to go back to that sensation. I want to go back to what it was before I before I'm here, before I was the one. So unfortunately, the only way that we can go is forward, you know. So instead of like, everything talking to us about here, we want to move backwards. Yes. But I feel that as an artist and as a very beautiful tool to bring through senses is that hey, spreading your words, you know, feel the ears, feel those voids. It may be sometimes like just that they trying to heal something, but sometimes that helps a lot. You know, those senses, those cultural beats, those go to put the vase together and keep it there for a long time.
Yeah, and maybe you just have to come back to things simple because just like you said, we started talking about the different countries, but then you can move inside your own country and feel that. I did that a lot when I moved from like a big city to the inner of the country. And I remember a lot of times I got like angry, like, don't stop me. And I was just in my own country. I was just like another place. But then we can go even back, like when we are kids and we change schools, we go to a new school. You don't have your friends there. You don't have the teacher that you know. The school is different. The food in the cafeteria is different. And you feel like some kids will feel sad in the first days, but then that kid's sitting near you. They have the same eraser that I have. They like the same spectrum. And then as kids, you start finding those small pieces that can put people together and make new friends and something like new place. So we grow up and sometimes you get tired and you just go back to a comfort zone and it's fun and learn. But I think that sometimes just like that, you have to find those connections like arts, um, areas of art, food, something that bring us together in some way to find a new place of belonging and feel good where we are now. Because yeah, we don't know how to go back here.
It's really sad. So I'm very observations. And relying on imagination will save you as well. And the second reason I'm thinking learning in this kids are kind of language. Well, I experienced the sense of not belonging here. When we go back, that we don't really belong there. And when you school there and have conflicts there, it also made again. When you go overseas being ways, it's made politically can be trained, country, social, civil. So my experience is complicated because a lot of the twenties was trying to find where to have home. And to the deep like what are things beyond just origin. But I think my mom's experience, so we were recently moved from Australia back in November. And we went back to my mom. And at that time she left it was bumped. And so we built and now it's very animalistic. Nothing resembles what she was students. There's one thing that's in this, which is like the floors. Floors, which is the normal thing, flood and that. But we looked at them and said, this isn't really, this doesn't represent anything that I remember. And so the notion before that is, getting people constantly with a bunch of state of nostalgia. It's also, not to make this about me, seeing what's happening in Palestine and seeing kind of just the politics and looking falling apart. And I just sit here down with generations of the history and trauma, trying to sense it. And yeah, I'm not wrong with this, but I think I just want to share sort of the feeling of lostness and what it feels like to be second generation and kind of just feeling my way into the world.
Mhm. Mhm.
I think that one of the reasons we connected with another, um, or what we have mentioned about our heart and feel that we belong there, is because somehow those experiences have innocence, that a purity, the embrace of my father, his caring, like that they're like unique. While here, we cannot be completely happy because there's so many problems in the world that I have to teach. Um, and I personally feel so proud, I global warming, about Palestine, Ukraine, the big problems and the problems here in the US, the race, all this violence. This is our reality, and we live it in our bodies, human body, the feelings of racism. Here. So it's like it's not that we haven't been able to change. I've had to change so much. Just learning the language. That's a huge process for me. Learning to express myself and, to not speaking English, teaching in English, writing in English, publishing in English, everything in English. It's not that I have no trying to adapt, but there is that rough part. Like I can go to a party and see all these people having fun and blah blah blah, and I'm thinking that the good people, or they, or we use all this things to be that we're working on the planet, and we use all these disposable plates and etc. This garbage and all this contamination that one day is gonna arrive to the sea and kill a turtle, whatever it is. I think how those things. One day, even though we live in the war, there was such moments of innocence that allow those relationships, your family members or your friends or neighbors with a connection. And I cannot, I can't, I haven't been able to. So
It's
it is fun.
and I often try to remind myself that the parent or grandparent figures that fill the space for us to have those simple memories were not in uncomplicated times either.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So, you know, and I think it's interesting that a lot of this has revolved around questions of being a child displaced into a new culture or being a father with a child growing up in a culture that is not the culture that you dream in, that you dream in, you know, the language that you dream in. Yeah, how do we create a sense of belonging for children? And how does that also make us sometimes feel displaced ourselves? Um, there's a really interesting generational relationship here too. Because yeah, I think our parents and grandparents were living through actually quite profoundly difficult times.
Yeah.
Um, with at least here in the US.
No,
Uh,
no, yeah.
yeah. You know, you know, many places in the world, our parents and grandparents' generations were complex, and yet we still found our way to feeling grounded in the places where we began. Yeah, sure, please.
So there's times of belonging, exactly. Understanding. Yeah, when the conversation came on, that in particular, I'll share speaking with postcards, and the first thing that came to mind was how belonging and belonging rather than safety yourself. And that's that in some fragment there, right?
Mm.
But to the extent that I'm that, I don't see what I can express. Figure out well, Oscar's minimum, we have our get together. And I mean, you want to go be with the musicians, with my son's a musician and dance. My son. I get together and have things and everything. So it's, I think a lot of us feel like we are outsiders to American culture specifically, finding belonging from American. The whatever language it's finding belonging in each other through different ways that I found finding not filling these gaps in ourselves in each other. Um through joy and connection over whatever it is we can have. There's no diploma here, whatever it can. Greater connection music necessarily. Connect different. And it's deeper than just being outside too. And never am I had
There's no rules.
it really years ago, I like to start something very, I mean, even my bonds from towards the so then you were moving and you realize you're in no place. You belong every place. No place at all. The price is high, the reward is great. And they started that quite a few years ago. Ultimately, what it meant for me is in this chaos of everything that I've run into familiarly, I never think about that from the to the first place. But what happened first was I developed I had to do myself. I had to just make a promise, something like that, just like whatever. And it's like, and then from there, things. So otherwise, I never foreseen that. That's was me actually. Um, and some of the problems that
Yeah, thanks.
And everyone for sharing. I just wanted to just add one thought about this idea of belonging. So my mom migrated here from southeastern Kentucky, so urban Appalachian, first generation, right? And there's so many similarities and parallels and things I hear about people understand you, they don't understand you, they judge you for this, you can talk this way, you can't talk that way, you can have this job, you can't have that job. But there was something when you were playing your music, I was tearing up because there was something in the sound. I feel like this back to the somatic thing too. I think there was connections that went deeper than even me as someone who didn't grow up in the mountains but grew up understanding that. Like when I first went down to the mountains, my people are buried. I felt like I and I've never done that, but I can tell you, it's like, it's in you and there's a beauty, a sense of, I've heard it in all the descriptions of where people felt like they, because like, I didn't know in so many different ways, but through the arts, through these senses of just being open to like hear a banjo when you were doing. Like it just was I was right there. And it was it kind of made me think about the universal that we can I think there's a potential to really tap into through art and through what is beautiful to us. Because that's a power, that is a force that can't be matched. So I just really appreciate it all. Stories.
Well, there was a little bit of that in what you shared as well about, starting dancing from such an early age and carrying that with you. And I'm wondering is the connections you make through dance and through videography, et cetera, did those create a sense of community and belonging for you that somehow transcends some of these early, simpler senses of belonging? Like, what does that feel like for you?
Yeah, mine is I really felt the necessity when I started living here in Cincinnati at some point to uh get this family. I started dancing before because I thought it's something that I need to do because it's my work, but it's also um my way to be good with my mind and my stuff. Otherwise, I just get crazy if I don't have all these if I don't challenge all these creativity and also, whatever that I have on my path I've been created all these years, right? It's kind of like a snail. I have everything in my life. Yeah, I felt I with I so it was the first thing that I need this. I need I need my dance. I need to make these connections. After that, I feel the necessity to be with the Hispanic community, with speak my language, to make my stupid jokes with other people. Yeah, fighting with my Spanish too. I find the guy that making more simple jokes. Thank you so so it's not what I needed. So when I started finding these people, getting off on this video with interviews. Well, it was very difficult because it was during the pandemic, so nobody wants to participate. So it was very difficult because nobody wants to go to the place we have the place for the interviews. So at some point I was just like I don't want to be here. I don't want to go back because I don't really want to do it there. So I was kind of in the limbo, or I'm not gonna say limbo in English. It's kind of limbo. Yeah, I'm not there. It's a point I feel like I was kind of like a trap in and I didn't know what to do. I was just like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what I need to, because everybody needs to express themselves in different languages, physically, emotional, and visual, whatever they need to be some communication, not just verbal, in different ways, right? Now we have all this YouTube, all this social media that at some point it wasn't really popular. So it was kind of difficult to find these connections there. Just like uh, at least to hear people like, oh, this is what's happening in my neighborhood, and the dog is running there, blah, blah, blah. And that makes you sometimes just feel in at home, just even though it's just these lives, watching stupid people. And so I feel the necessity to find this community, right? Because I feel that for me it was it's always like have been kind of difficult because I belong to so many different communities, right? When I moved first from my hometown to the city, I feel outside there because people make fun of me the way I talk because it was this little community that then some people don't speak Spanish correctly. So I have this course too. And it's like people like used to for me because the way I talk, right? So I have to learn. I mean, to live there. Then I moved to the country when kind of learn to speak the language. Then I have to go there, and blah 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 blah. And this is one of the minorities that belong to being like part of indigenous, right? And the other part is like, okay, I'm not just indigenous, so I'm gay, so it's kind of difficult to see those sort of different communities, right? And then I was like, okay, I'm not just like indigenous. Hey, I am music now. So it's just kind of like difficult to go in that other community, right? So I'm not just indigenous gay, I'm an artist or something. Okay. I think it's fantastic to get in some different communities. So I think it's for everyone, right? Some have also with the same Hispanic community, right? It's just like, okay, you are undocumented or you cannot do this. So people can make you feel sometimes outsider to some country because you are not kind of like you don't belong to that place because you don't have these things. So that was my necessity also to speak about the difference of the all this diversity of the Hispanic community, right? I grew up with my grandfathers, but when my grandpa, when he was young, he was working here in the United States for 7 years. He went back before. They had a contract to work in the fields. So he came, but he need to cover the seasons, the onions, or the seasons, or whatever. So he came, but he never lived here. He was lived there. So it was kind of like eventually when I came here, I know some people work in that field with my grandpa. I used to live in North Carolina, so it like this, like uh, Hispanic now, things like that. And you can see all these people starting to take like English classes, kind of like try to belong with the community, with the language, with the communication, because they can speak language. So I just kind of like feel kind of like made me thought how my grandpa survived in this place when he didn't speak the language or how he did. So that's what I just kind of like I thought it's important. I have to do this. My second work with the with the Hispanic community, it was kind of like um, pay homage to these immigrants who get lost during the immigration journey. So I call this program Learn Adults Wealth. So I work with people who share stories and they want to share stories because it's very difficult to share stories about that. The people they can cannot make the dream, right? Uh, uh, I get involved in some all my process on these shows, if I can go like that, the performances. that point because I started interviewing people that they don't have these chances to. They don't really like. They don't have the privilege that we have, right? So I get in touch with organization. It's called Missing Migrants in Costa Rica to hear stories. So I cried a long time because the stories there were very, very, very strong with these people. I finally find a person here, actually here in Brazil, that shared a story for me. So we told her new story. So I think the sense of belong is very difficult for everyone for different reasons. Um, but sometimes we are just like feeling this trap in this limbo that we can go back, but we didn't know it once they here. It's I don't know. It's really accept the necessity to speak to myself. The people I know they're my friends, but they need opportunities
Mhm.
to feel that they belong.
Yeah, I mean, there's themes of like one needs to belong to oneself, accept who one is, but we do belong to each other too. And you were speaking about filters that get in the way of our sense of belonging to others, but it's also true that others hold filters that get in the way of our sense of belonging to each other. You just spoke about that. And we do belong to place. There are original places. Sometimes we rediscover them they're somehow connected to in ways that are surprising. I feel like your stories earlier tonight about feeling the sense of connection to Quechua and to the music of that, and to kind of a rediscovery of some kind of heritage that maybe you didn't know you were so deeply connected to. So there are these deep connections to place and to culture as well. Uh, yeah, I think we're gonna need to wrap, but I want to give everybody just a chance to say a few more things. I see you queuing up a few things to say. So I don't know if we just want to go around and any last words before we end.
One thing that I found is that sometimes, in my experience, I can only talk about personal experiences. I think to learn to let go in order to embrace something else. For me, there was a realization. And it was a couple of years that I didn't do it. And then and then I was not the same place, came back. And during all the time that I was in the States, I was thinking, I believe that I want to go to a place. And then I realized that I wanted to go back to the moment. Because when I went to the place wasn't there.
Mhm.
And when I realized that I really wanted to go back to a movement, that I confused for a place, and I realized that it was impossible to go back to moments, I was able to enjoy more my life here. Because I knew that I have this present, you know, and I know that in the future I'm gonna miss the moments that I had when I was a kid. I know that I know as a teenager. Miss the time when you love me so much. And I don't want to waste that moment, that present, and paying attention in something that does not exist. Yeah. Like, if I rather enjoy the presence of her rather than longing for, and that does not mean forgetting. Mhm. I will always love her. I will always love my grandma. I will always love to be in the terrace of the house, tomando fresco. That's important to me. Okay. Um, but I don't want to sit in Cincinnati thinking of that while my mom is asking me to listen. So sometimes it's important to be able to let go and to enjoy this because we're always letting go. We're constantly saying goodbye. Mhm. Um, and I don't want to say goodbye to the church. I would rather say goodbye than the service. And in the case of the United States, I have a problem because I will always have an accent. Even if I'm from Spanish. And not so much. In the case of the United States, I have a problem because I I don't want to call myself foreigner in. And the other day she surprised me with something. She told one of her friends about the family. My dad lives in Mexico. I don't know. He lived there. Since we're but in her mind, I live in Mexico. Well, but in her mind, it also doesn't mean that I live there. Mm. If it is where I belong wherever she is. If I will to Mexico to make the she Mexico, if we both move to a moving planet, you know, that's what.
It's energy.
Okay, so thank you. I don't know.
But I love the way that you express different between feeling a moment of nostalgia and moments as opposed to places. I think that it's clarity. That's what we have been saying. Um, and I in a way experienced that. I used to do research focused on Colombia. So I was constantly thinking about Colombia, writing about Colombia, writing about Colombia. Why did I say I have to stop it? And I start to understand my reality. And that's when I switch my research focus to immigration and think that of the Latino community here in the United States and Canada. And yeah, and further improve my feeling easier in this space. Uh, yeah, that's all I think.
Yes, the same way of both points. Um, bring in, we're in a time, or we're always going to be in a time of nostalgia now. Um, for young, we were reading all the time. Well, we were reading the version for us, at least ourselves. We are not human that was there in Colombia, personally 10 years ago. I love the Oscar that was 5 years ago, and we are all the time losing that self. Yeah. And I believe that our labor sometimes as artists or entrepreneurs is trying to create bridges without getting lost in nostalgia.
Mm, mm,
Nostalgia is necessary because knowing your plans, knowing what's going on, you can probably shape the future. You know, you were saying it before, they were struggling too. And before them, they were struggling as well. You know, it's a different struggle than whatever we are. Wherever any of us is right now, that's the center of the universe. No matter where we are. If I go right now to Northern Kentucky, that's the center of the universe. And that sometimes can limit our perspective of other centers of the universe. I think that is our main labor, either as educators, performers, or as bring through senses, that those bridges between those universes. That's kind of the new way to feel the net of belonging, the net of these that are different. You know, and the experience can be knowledge, can be this that I move for. It's just a little more the net, you know, to something, to someone, to community, to these universities.
I feel contemplated by what everyone said. I think that it like brings all the feelings in last words. And to me, I feel like after I have a new vision about what is belonging now and how to perceive myself in this world. But at the end, belong to me came to a safe place, a place where my heart is safe, but I feel safe, where it's like having someone, a place, a memory, something to run to when things get difficult. So if you have that safe place, no matter what it is there where you feel comfort and you feel safe, and that when you feel comfort and safe, you feel that you belong there, feel that you're protected from the tragedies of the world, the hardships of life. It's where you can find your sprinkles of joy and love in hardships of everyday life.
Belonging for me is the place that I can be feeling comfortable, and I think I can my voice can be heard, my opinion matters. Uh, Wherever it is, that is the place that I belong.
Mhm. Mm.
And that's when it's difficult in this context. That other opinions matter.
Mm.
Yeah,
It's very difficult.
it's very difficult. So,
Sometimes places English yourself.
yeah, finally that place start making my papa because it's the main stop for me. So, and when you say it, I have people that remind me that all the time.
Mhm.
And it's kind of in this moment it's very difficult not to hear that voices because you hear it all the time. Because uh even though if I belong to place, I still be an immigrant, right? So immigration law is like a very not human conversation, it's a political conversation. It is very stigmatized color of your skin. So people that I live with, I'm always being different. Not because the way I talk, not because of my accent, is just for the way I look. Okay, because I hear um because now immigration is associated is related with the color brown, right? No matter if you are immigrant, white immigrant, but you see you like immigrant. But if you are brown, even though you're born in this country, sometimes people think that you are an immigrant.
I warn you that these conversations never really come to a point. I feel like we're just starting another conversation, but we do need to say that this is where we'll stop the conversation tonight. The um, and we feel safe to express ourselves, and we've had musical expression earlier. I'm gonna just segue there. We do have these with some frequency. Our next two are actually music related. they're going to start the 2 nights of the North by Northside Music Festival on Memorial Day weekend. So if you enjoy this, and you also enjoy music and thinking about sound and music, we'll have 2 Saturday and Sunday afternoons, 5 to 6:30 in Hawthorne Park in Northside for a music festival. So those are our next 2 alloys. But I think what we need to do now is to thank all of the voices that spoke up tonight. Thank you again, Manuel, for his poetry and Oscar for his beautiful music. Thank you. We can get you out anyway, but we will get you out.
There's an artist I know, she's from the UK, she lives in the US, her name is Ellen Harvey. And a lot of you were talking about places that you've lost and go back to. Really changed my war. And what she does is you submit a place, then you don't know how exists, when you existed and she beats it. And this exhibit is touring the world. On a disappointed tourist, and you can go to her website. Ellen Harvey and disappointed tourist, because you can submit request. And she'll meet it, and it could be at a moment in time, and yeah. And I suggested people check it out, and she knows it's not going to repair anything, but she's interested in personal losses, cultural losses, and what art does to negotiate for acknowledge.
Disappointed tourist.
Yeah.
There you go.